Chapter 241. Xiaoji has no desire to talk to you, and has just shoved an old man at you. They spent a pleasant afternoon at the Shrieking Shack. Throughout that time, Harry kept stealing glances at Cho, while Cho, in turn, kept stealing glances at Xiaoji. After leaving the Shrieking Shack, Xiaoji promptly messaged Nick, instructing him to find 2 house elves who were efficient at their work and possessed gentle temperaments to help look after the place. He certainly had no desire to spend another afternoon grinding coffee beans. The following evening, members of DA spotted a very neatly dressed house elf standing outside the Shrieking Shack. The elf politely assisted them in operating inside. Inside the Shrieking SHCK, there was another house elf wearing clothing just as clean and tidy as the one outside. Upon seeing the DA members, it immediately sprang into action, eager to serve them. Hermione had no objections, knowing full well how kindly Xiaoji treated 073 and the others. Still, may I occasionally speak with them? Hermione found Xiaoji in the lounge area and voiced her wish to converse with the elves. Of course. You can ask Andy to escort you to their quarters, then bring you back afterward, Xiaoji replied with a smile. Andy was the very house elf who had helped the DA members apparate earlier. You aren't afraid I might say something inappropriate to them? Hermione asked, puzzled. Why would I be afraid? I'm not their master. In fact, I intend to hire them, but they consider that an insult, so, Xiaoji shrugged helplessly. Just be careful with your words when speaking to them. Otherwise, they might grow to dislike you, and your plans could fall through. Hermione's pretty eyes widened in astonishment. You already know what I'm thinking? I can make a few educated guesses. House elves behave this way largely due to the conditioning they receive from birth. All we need to do is prevent such enslavement from occurring in their earliest years. Hermione's mouth hung open in utter disbelief, not just her eyes, but her lips too. What Xiaoji said matched perfectly with the very method she'd spent ages devising. Still, I recommend earning their trust first. Compliment them on how well they work. For instance, to be precise, winning over a house elf and gaining its loyalty is remarkably easy. Of course, unless it's an exceptionally odd one, Xiaoji added, recalling Creature from Sirius's household and Nick, his own top aide. Hermione flashed him a sweet smile. Thank you, Xiaoji. You truly understand me, unlike others, who always mock me. She committed his advice to memory and cheerfully operated away with Andy. Xiaoji took a sip of steaming tea, gazed at the shifting scenery outside, and murmured softly, "It's about time." Inside the Chamber of Secrets, a strikingly beautiful girl, no older than 16 or 17, waved her wand against a floating shadow before her. Their fierce clash left craters all over the chamber walls. Boom! After another thunderous blast, both combatants ceased fighting. Slytherin nodded in satisfaction. You've made tremendous progress. Frankly speaking, you're the most gifted witch I've seen in a millennium, excluding that freakish Xiaoji, of course. In an instant, Xiaoji appeared inside the chamber. He frowned at the devastation surrounding him. Oh ho. Just because I'm skilled at restoration magic doesn't grant you license to wreak havoc like this. With a casual wave of his wand, shattered stones flew back to their original spots, and broken walls and floors gradually mended themselves. Tom, how are you feeling now? Xiaoji gazed at the lovely teenage girl before him, a sight that instantly gave him a headache. Upon seeing him, Tom's eyes shone with delight. You haven't visited me in ages. Her tone carried a hint of melancholy. Gah. Please speak normally. Xiaoji shivered at the sensation crawling down his spine. Tom's soul had fully transformed into that of a woman. Just thinking about it gave him endless frustration. Why had this happened? Logically, Tom should have had a 99.9% chance of resurrecting in a male body. Yet, thanks to Tom, Xiaoji now realized that 99.9% was actually a laughably low probability. Tom. Now Esther, step back. I've got a new name now. Please don't call me Tom anymore. I'm Esther Riddle. Esther. The name rang vaguely familiar. Suddenly, he recalled a horror film he'd watched in his past life, Orphan. The malevolent girl who destroyed an entire family was named Esther, a wicked yet enchanting figure whose image had stuck with him. Who? Xiaoji drew in a sharp breath. Yes, this name truly suited Tom. Still, thankfully, most of Esther's power now stemmed from him, ensuring she'd never escape his control. Very well, I'll call you Esther from now on. Xiaoji bowed politely. Of course, you may call me Esther too. We're the best of friends, aren't we? Esther replied with a smile, though to Xiaoji, it seemed downright eerie. So, Esther, are you prepared to turn the wizarding world upside down? Xiaoji asked. Do you mean I can go out now? She asked eagerly. Your strength is more than sufficient. It's time for you to venture forth. Your counterpart, Voldemort, has far more experience than you. Xiaoji spoke truthfully. Esther possessed only Voldemort's memories and knowledge up until age 16, but much of his wisdom had been gained only through years of real-world trials. She still had a long way to go, but Slytherin's guidance ensured she stood a chance. Understood. Esther nodded resolutely. Now, old man, you're accompanying her too. Xiaoji ordered Slytherin without ceremony, sending the latter's mustache into an indignant quiver. You wouldn't want your precious descendant to be deceived by others due to inexperience, would you? Xiaoji threatened smoothly. Reluctantly, Slytherin acquiesced. He couldn't afford to lose another descendant. Xiaoji posed no risk, but Esther still required his aid. That day, Xiaoji bid a tearful Esther farewell. Before she left, he even slipped an elderly man into her care. Chapter 242. Qiu Zhang. Cedric is great, but I simply don't like him. As the old man of Slytherin, he ultimately chose to hide inside Esther's ring. Xiaoji grabbed Esther's arm and instantly operated them both to Hogwarts. In the blink of an eye, they found themselves in a narrow alleyway. This is a corner of Diagon Alley. I assume you recognize it. After all, the wizarding world hasn't progressed much over the years. Apart from age, not much has changed among us wizards. Xiaoji shrugged, then took out a pouch and handed it to Esther. The pouch emitted pleasant clinking sounds of metal. When out in the world, it's best to carry some galleons with you. This is special funding I've approved for you. If it isn't enough, feel free to ask me for more. Esther silently accepted the pouch and tucked it away. She touched the black ring on her finger, but said nothing. Do you have any questions? None. Good. Out there, you may continue improving yourself or even stir up some trouble, but don't kill anyone casually. Every wizard is incredibly valuable to us. Killing indiscriminately would only harm our cause. Esther nodded in agreement. Well then, I'm off now. Goodbye. Xiaoji took a step back, his figure instantly vanishing into the darkness. Esther instinctively reached out, but her hand grasped only empty air. Xiaoji had already disappeared. She let out a soft sigh, then turned and walked out of the alley. Ever since that match against Gryffindor, Qiu Zhang's standing within Ravenclaw had become similar to Luna's. Though no one could refute the sharp retorts she'd made that day, she'd also offended quite a few people. Unsurprisingly, she was now isolated by her fellow Ravenclaws. Even Marietta Edgecombe, her closest friend before, gradually distanced herself from Qiu Zhang. Thus, Luna was now her only true friend in Ravenclaw. Thankfully, though they shunned her, none dared to tease her as they once had Luna. That's because she was now both Luna's friend and Xiaoji, ally. There was no doubt that if anyone dared cross the line, that terrifying figure Xiaoji would make another appearance. Yet Qiu Zhang saw nothing wrong with this. A couple of true friends were more than enough for her. Those so-called friends who required masks to befriend her held no real importance. She loved talking with Luna. Though Luna sometimes acted rather oddly, she was always completely sincere. With her, Qiu Zhang never had to hide her true self. Recently, however, Qiu Zhang faced a new annoyance. When Luna entered the Great Hall, Qiu Zhang was intently focused on a bowl of noodles, though her expression remained troubled. I see those bothersome gnats swarming around your head again. I hadn't noticed them in ages. Luna sat down beside her and removed the wand tucked behind her ear. Sometimes I truly wonder if you can actually see those little creatures. Yet, miraculously, you're always right. Xiao Zhang helplessly set down her chopsticks. Her bowl was already empty. She'd merely been dragging them along the bare surface. Of course I can see them. They're fluttering all over your head. Quite lively, really. Luna's gaze seemed unfocused, as though she truly perceived those pesky creatures.
Oh.
Luna, if you don't mind, may I ask what's troubling you? Luna shifted her gaze and ordered some pudding. Luna, eating dessert for breakfast isn't very good. Thank you for your concern, but compared to my health, I'm far more interested in what's weighing on your mind. Luna scooped up a large chunk of strawberry pudding and eagerly popped it into her mouth. With pudding still in her mouth, Luna blinked her large eyes at Xiaozhang, brimming with anticipation. Xiaozhang covered her face, feeling too embarrassed to speak. Let me guess. Luna removed the spoon from her mouth. Is this about Xiaozhi? I bet you confessed to him, and he rejected you? What are you talking about? Of course not. Xiaozhang flushed deeply, protesting. Oh, so you've already fallen for someone else. Luna gazed at her with innocent, wide eyes. I imagined Xiaozhi would be heartbroken. Luna, what on earth goes through that head of yours? Of course not. Xiaozhang rubbed her forehead in exasperation. Oh, so it's not someone else. That means you admit you like Xiaozhi. Luna popped in another bite of pudding and winked at her. Xiaozhang turned crimson. This conversation was hopeless. Luna, I do like Xiaozhi.
Oh.
Then, Luna's eyes sparkled. Don't get me wrong, I mean, at Hogwarts, who wouldn't like him? Xiaozhang replied craftily. Luna silently stared at Xiaozhang's face for a long moment, making her feel utterly transparent. Just as Xiaozhang planned to excuse herself for class to escape this awkwardness, suddenly someone spoke behind her. Hey! Both Xiaozhang and Luna turned to see tall, handsome Cedric Diggory. His hands fidgeted nervously at his clothes. Greeting them seemed to have drained all his courage. Good morning, Diggory. Xiaozhang awkwardly sat back down. She'd already planned to leave. Yet walking off after someone greeted her felt rather impolite. You may call me Cedric. Cedric spoke hesitantly. Oh, hello, Cedric. Cedric noticed Xiaozhang's bowl.
Oh.
Do you like those noodles too? I adore them. Xiaozhi truly taught the house elves a wonderful recipe. Luna, cheeks stuffed with pudding, watched the two exchange awkward small talk with curiosity. After chatting at length with Xiaozhang, Cedric finally left, a joyful expression on his face, clearly thrilled by his progress. Xiaozhang sat back down, scratching her head. Clearly, Diggory likes you. Luna set down her empty plate, patted her belly contentedly, and let out a belch. But I don't like him. This was Xiaozhang's true worry. Cedric kept deliberately seeking her out, and she understood his intentions all too well. She needed a way to politely decline him when he finally spoke, ensuring he wouldn't feel humiliated. Why not? Diggory's so tall and handsome. Why don't you like him? Luna blinked drowsily. He's great, yet I just don't like him. Xiaozhang lowered her head. An image flashed through her mind. He wore Gryffindor robes, 2 brooms slung over his shoulder, standing before her with that warm, springtime smile. Chapter 243. Who slept with Ron instead of Peter being Potter? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Boom. Crash.
Ah.
I'll get you guys. I know it's you, Weasley. Filch's furious shouts echoed from afar. Xiaozhi and the Weasley twins immediately bolted off. However, at a corner, Xiaozhi glanced back at Filch. The poop egg mines he'd conjured had caught Filch dead center. Now Filch reeked entirely of excrement, driving him into a frenzy. Filch sniffed his own stench and nearly vomited, but just as he was about to spew, his entire body abruptly transformed into a scrawny canary. Oh ho, Xiaozhi watched with interest, then kept running. Once the three hid in an empty classroom, Xiaozhi cast a minor spell to muffle sound at the door. Only then did the Weasley twins burst into laughter. They cackled wildly, rolling on the floor from mirth. Did you see that, Fred? Filch had no clue those were our traps. Absolutely. He stepped right into them. Xiaoji, your ideas are simply unmatched. How did you ever come up with this poop egg mine concept? Xiaoji chuckled proudly. There's nothing you can't imagine, and nothing I can't craft as a prank item. Indeed, Xiaoji was finally enjoying a late-night adventure with the Weasley twins once more. Upon encountering Filch, he'd unleashed his self-developed poop egg mines, resulting in an overwhelming success. Xiaoji, you're a genius. Exactly. With this, we can torment that old fool even without being present. The Weasley twins showered Xiaoji with praise, yet his focus lay elsewhere. He'd indeed added a potion to those eggs capable of temporarily transforming people into canaries. However, this potion only affected wizards. It actively absorbed their magical energy to compel bodily transformation. Yet Filch was a squib. So, did squibs possess some form of magic too? Xiaoji felt like he'd just unlocked a whole new realm of knowledge. While he remained absorbed in thought, the Weasley twins produced their treasured map. The Marauder's Map, their indispensable tool over the years for evading Filch's pursuits. It depicted all secret passages within Hogwarts and the real-time locations of every wizard. Huddled around a desk, they whispered animatedly. So, did Filch leave? Xiaoji snapped back to reality, asking. Yup, that old fool's probably heading back to clean off those poop eggs. Look, he's heading toward the washrooms. Fred and George exchanged glances, both gleaming with mischief. Clearly, they already schemed to torment poor Filch yet again. Well, they were eternal rivals after all.
Ah,
Right, I just discussed this with Fred. We intend to give you this Marauder's Map. We feel our prank talents pale next to yours. You'd benefit far more from this map than us. Fred and George spoke in turn. George then handed the map over. Really? You'd gift this to me? Pure delight lit up Xiaoji's face. Absolutely. Though we'll miss it. We sense this map belongs in your hands. You're surely familiar with its spells already. No need for further words. Xiaoji gratefully accepted the map. I solemnly swear I've done nothing good. Gradually, Hogwarts materialized onto the blank parchment. Tiny dots marked every individual, each labeled with a name. Xiaoji noticed himself, Fred, and George concealed in a derelict third-floor classroom. Filch remained in the staff washrooms. For a non-magical squib, those exploding poop eggs meant an entire night of scrubbing. Xiaoji then scanned others. Cassandra Vole stayed in Liz's office, likely training with her mother. Professor Dumbledore paced his office as usual. Hermione slept soundly in her dorm. Seamus lingered in Luna's quarters, up to no good. And atop Gryffindor Tower, right beside Ron's name, appeared none other than Peter. Huh. Weird, Xiaoji murmured. What is it? Fred and George leaned closer. The Marauder's Maps never aired before, right? Indeed. We've used it years without flaw. Did you spot something odd? Xiaoji pointed to the space next to Ron's name. We've never seen anyone named Peter, have we? Fred and George peered intently. Oh, you're right. I recall no Peter among Gryffindor students. What's going on here? Wait. This Peter seems to be sharing a bed with little Ronnie. Both twins gasped. Ever since obtaining the map, they'd tracked Filch and professors, never paying close attention to students. Only now did they notice this mysterious Peter beside Ron. Who on earth is Peter? Seems he beds with Ronnie nightly? Should we tell Mum? Little Ronnie's peculiar tastes. Mum'd be heartbroken. Or could the map be mistaken? Perhaps Peter isn't Peter, but Potter?
whoa.
Plausible. There's no Peter in Gryffindor now. Exactly.
See?
Potter's not in his own bed. So it's true. Thus, Potter sleeps with Ronnie nightly? Should we tell Ginny? Probably not. Ginny'd be devastated. Xiaoji mused. He'd merely aimed to steer the twins toward Peter's existence so they'd uncover him. Yet their imaginations ran wild. They now assumed Harry and Ron shared a bed nightly. Only them. I say we investigate, Xiaoji suggested. Absolutely. Fred and George's eyes sparkled. Compared to teasing Filch, Exposing Harry and Ron's secret would be far more delightful. Chapter 244. Peter, an Invisible Ghost. Xiaoji feigned a glance at the map, then spoke to Fred and George. No one's around. Let's head back. You two should learn the invisibility charm, Xiaoji said, casting the spell on each of them. To their astonishment, Fred and George found themselves invisible.
Whoa.
We really should have learned this spell ages ago. That's the invisibility charm, right? How did we forget about it? Fred and George thumped their chests in frustration. They felt like they'd missed out on a golden opportunity. Had they mastered invisibility earlier, they could have explored Hogwarts far more freely. The three of them returned safely to the Gryffindor attic. Once the invisibility wore off, they slipped into the common room. Come on, let's go check on Ron. Imagine their faces when they realize we've uncovered their secret. It'll be priceless, Xiaoji remarked. Just stay calm. Don't make any noise. If things get out of hand, your family's reputation will suffer. True enough. We certainly don't want people gossiping about us wherever we go. Ooh, look, those are that gay bloke's brothers. Ugh, both Fred and George dreaded such a scenario. Reluctantly, the Weasley twins trailed behind Xiaoji, tiptoeing into the boys' dormitory. Harry and Ron's room was right next to Xiaoji's own quarters. Xiaoji raised his wand and pointed it gently at the door. With a soft click, the lock disengaged. Nodding at each other, Xiaoji and the twins slipped inside stealthily, like thieves in the night. They bypassed Neville Longbottom's and Seamus Finnegan's beds, heading straight for Ron's. Sure enough, Harry wasn't in his bed. Xiaoji figured he'd probably be roaming around Hogwarts, wearing his invisibility cloak. Fred and George exchanged glances, then nodded in unison before yanking back the curtain. There lay Ron, snoring soundly like a pig, completely unfazed by the commotion. The twins scanned the area intently but saw no sign of anyone named Peter. Fred even checked beneath the bed, yet came up empty-handed. Xiaoji, however, clearly saw him, a hairless rat named Scabbers, curled up beside Ron's pillow, fast asleep. That was Peter Pettigrew, an animagus capable of transforming into a rat, the very traitor who'd betrayed James and Lily to Voldemort. Yet Xiaoji remained silent, quietly slipping out alongside the Weasley twins. They found themselves back in the deserted common room. Fred and George looked pale. Peter seemed like an invisible ghost. The map still showed him right beside Ron's bed. Yet they couldn't see him at all. It was utterly baffling. Even for seasoned wizards like the twins, this defied all logic and sent chills down their spines. Should we tell a professor? Exactly. And then we'd end up in detention. The twins lapsed into silence. Such hesitation was highly unusual for them. They were torn. On one hand, this mysterious Peter might pose a grave threat to their little brother. On the other, admitting to nighttime wandering would expose their secret escapades. Sure, detention wouldn't be the end of the world, but the Marauders' map would be revealed, and they'd already given it to Xiaoji. Still, Ron was their blood brother. They resolved to report it, even if it meant punishment. Only problem, they have to retrieve that map from Xiaoji. Xiaoji, sorry. It's like, the map. Both twins hesitated, unsure how to proceed. Relax. Have you forgotten who my mother is? We might even avoid any penalties. Xiaoji replied coolly. Right. We could consult Professor Liss. But how should we explain this? The map will definitely come to light, Xiaoji shrugged. Honesty's the best policy. Besides, you've already given it to me, meaning I'm free to handle it as I see fit, right? Understood. The twins felt indebted to Xiaoji. Parting with such a marvelous artifact so soon pained them. They'd hate it if someone did the same to them. Don't worry, I'll find another way to obtain a map someday. You know how well I get along with the professors. No need to feel indebted to me. All right, Xiaoji, we'll stay here waiting with you until the professors arrive, Fred and George declared in unison. Not necessary. One person facing punishment is enough. You two should return to bed. Absolutely not. Fred's eyes widened. We sneaked out together. How can you bear the burden alone? Exactly. George agreed. That's unfair. My mother wouldn't punish me harshly. I've rarely misbehaved. But you too. I imagine Professor McGonagall's records on you are quite extensive. One more infraction. Xiaji trailed off thoughtfully. A shiver ran down the twins' spines. Very well. If you end up scrubbing toilets in detention, we'll help you. The Weasley twins promised before retreating to their dorm. Xiaji pondered briefly. Then, contrary to his earlier words, he headed back to Ron's room. Standing beside the bed, he flicked his wand. Scabbers instantly fell unconscious. Using the floating charm, he lifted the rat from Ron's pillow. He placed the motionless rodent on the common room table, raised his wand, and unleashed a violet beam straight into its skull. Moments later, Xiaji nodded in satisfaction. Peter's memories had been altered via soul magic. Soul magic differs vastly from ordinary memory modification spells. Standard spells leave detectable traces. Soul magic induces deep hypnosis, implanting false recollections so firmly that the victim believes them utterly real. Strictly speaking, this constitutes extreme psychological suggestion rather than mere memory alteration, and leaves zero evidence of tampering. In truth, Xiaji could wield this magic to brainwash nearly anyone, ensuring unwavering loyalty and devotion. Yet he disdained such manipulative tactics. True followers, he believed, are those drawn by one's charisma and ideals, like Grindelwald's devoted disciples. Now then, let's begin. Xiaji snapped his fingers. Peter Pettigrew jolted awake. Confused, he realized he wasn't curled up beside his master. How had he ended up in Gryffindor's common room? Right, I came here all by myself, Peter remembered. Only then did he notice Xiaji standing before him, wand in hand. Chapter 245, Xiaji, I gave you a chance but you failed. Peter instantly became nervous. What was going on? Had he been exposed? But that was impossible. No one knew he had turned into a mouse and hidden in the Weasley home. Or rather, the only person in the world who knew his true identity was currently locked up in Azkaban. So why was this young wizard staring at him nonstop, while also holding a wand in his hand? Peter Pettigrew? Xiaji spoke softly. Peter felt as though he'd been struck by lightning. He knew who I was. Why? How did he possibly know? And why did I even come out here myself? I remember now. I obtained a diary belonging to my master. It contains a fragment of his soul. I must resurrect my master. Tonight is the perfect night for my actions. Peter suddenly remembered once more. Yet this didn't quite make sense either. In Peter's memories, he'd been preparing to slip away to attend to his master's affairs when he encountered this young wizard in the Gryffindor common room. Upon seeing him attempt to sneak off, the young wizard promptly stepped forward, blocking his path and drawing his wand. At first, Peter assumed the wizard mistook him for an ordinary mouse and intended to eliminate him. Yet right from the start, this wizard called him out by name. But how could he possibly know who he was? Never mind how he knew the name Peter Pettigrew. Even now, in his current form, he looked exactly like a mouse. Peter couldn't make sense of it, but that didn't matter. His duty to his master still had to be fulfilled. He planned to make a break for it. Having spent years as a mouse, escaping was what he excelled at. He had no doubt this young wizard wouldn't be able to catch him. Back in the day, he'd blown up an entire street and escaped unscathed from Sirius Black's grasp.
Whoosh.
Peter instantly leaped off the table, darting beneath it. Based on past experience, as long as he slipped into one of those crevices, no one would ever find him. Yet just as his body left the air, he saw Xiaji point his wand toward him. Sectum Sempra. What? Peter frantically twisted his body, trying to dodge this spell. Peter recognized the spell. He'd followed James and the others at one point and witnessed Snape cast it himself. He knew full well how razor-sharp this spell was. Without a counterspell, any wound inflicted by it would never heal. Thus, he absolutely couldn't be hit. In Peter's eyes, this young wizard seemed inexperienced, as the spell had clearly missed its mark. Sectum Sempra sliced off a small portion of his tail and split a nearby table cleanly in two. Staring at the perfectly severed edges of the table, Peter broke out in cold sweat. He nearly died. There was no time to wait passively. He had to subdue this young wizard. Otherwise, he might very well perish right here today. Peter abruptly changed direction, abandoning his escape attempt and lunging straight towards Xiaji. This plump little mouse suddenly transformed into a short, chubby man mid-lunge. He aimed straight for Xiaji's wand, hoping to snatch it away, while the boy stood frozen in shock. No one would have ever anticipated a mouse suddenly turning into a man. Sure enough, upon seeing Peter transform, Xiaji seemed momentarily stunned. Perfect opportunity. Peter seized the wand from Xiaji's grasp. Then, grinning viciously, he pointed it at the boy and cast the Imperio spell. If he could control this young wizard, he'd gain a powerful ally. With an ally at his side, his mission to open the Chamber of Secrets and resurrect his master would proceed smoothly. Swish! Peter's sinister grin instantly froze, for Xiaji had vanished from his sight. His Imperio spell had missed completely. Panic surged within him. He swiftly turned around, only to find Xiaji standing behind him, smiling serenely. You. Peter stared in utter disbelief. How could a 12-year-old wizard dodge his spells? Avada Kedavra. Terror gripped Peter as he unleashed the killing curse. He no longer intended to hold back. A dreadful premonition told him today might very well be his last. Sure enough, Xiaji vanished once more. The green beam streaked past where Xiaji had stood, striking the fireplace and carving out a massive crater. Please give me flowers. TSK, TSK, TSK. Peter Pettigrew. Is this the extent of your abilities? Xiaji's voice drifted softly from right behind him. Peter whirled around, eyes wide with fear, staring at Xiaji. Xiaji lounged comfortably on a sofa, gazing at Peter with mild boredom. Who exactly are you? No wizard should be this powerful.
You needn't know who I am.
All you must know is that Professor Dumbledore is on his way here. What? Peter's eyes bulged in shock. If Dumbledore saw him still alive. He raised his wand again, intent on attacking Xiaji. Yet Xiaji merely flicked his hand, and Peter's short, chubby body was sent flying, crashing hard against the common room wall. Xiaji slowly approached, picked up his wand from the floor, then thumped Peter's head with it, speaking in disappointment. I gave you a chance, yet you proved utterly useless. Please spare me. If you let me go, I'll do anything for you. Peter crawled at Xiaji's feet. Back then, didn't you kneel before Voldemort, begging him for mercy? Xiaji replied coldly. You have no idea. You can't possibly fathom how powerful the Dark Lord truly is. I believe if you ever saw him yourself, you'd... Peter faltered, but Xiaji scoffed dismissively and turned away. Seeing Xiaji relax his guard, Peter's heart soared. He swiftly reverted to mouse form and darted toward a hole in the wall. Yet his joy vanished instantly, for he realized his entire body had gone rigid. He couldn't move at all. You didn't honestly think you'd still be able to escape, did you? Xiaji's icy voice rang out. Then, to his horror, Peter felt his stiffened body being yanked back outward. Clack! The entrance to the Gryffindor common room swung open. Professor Dumbledore's familiar silhouette appeared at the doorway. His deep blue eyes scanned the signs of battle within the room, then landed on the large rat in Xiaji's hand, before finally settling on Xiaji himself. Upon receiving your message, I hurried over at once. Now then, what exactly has happened here? Chapter 246, Shocking. Ron cuddles a wizard every night to fall asleep. Tonight, Harry was feeling rather down, so he put on his invisibility cloak and went out for a stroll. Yet the moment he entered the Gryffindor common room, he saw Professor Dumbledore and Xiaji standing face to face. Harry instantly gasped in shock. If the headmaster found out about his nighttime excursion, but then, recalling that he was cloaked in invisibility, he felt relieved. They surely wouldn't notice him. Yet just as that thought crossed his mind, he realized both Xiaji and Professor Dumbledore were gazing directly at his location.
Well,
Harry's face fell. He knew he'd been seen through by those two. He even began to suspect that the invisibility cloak his father had left him might actually be a fake. Harry, I was just looking for you. Xiaoji, tone was grave, as if he had important matters to discuss. No longer hesitating, Harry lifted the invisibility cloak, revealing himself. 087. Professor? I was merely taking a walk. Harry, I think next time you might want to go out for a stroll a bit earlier. Professor Dumbledore peered at Harry over his half-moon spectacles. Ashamed, Harry lowered his head, resolving never to sneak out at night again. Putting Harry's nighttime escapades aside for now, I believe he has a right to know about what's coming next, Xiaoji interjected. So, what's happened? Is there something amiss with this mouse? Professor Dumbledore inquired, puzzled. I believe it'd be best to discuss this in your office, Professor. Xiaoji glanced around. Numerous young witches and wizards were peeking down from the staircases. Earlier, the clash between Xiaoji and Peter Pettigrew had inevitably caused some commotion, waking up those students with light sleep. Ah, very well, let's speak in my office. This place, Professor Dumbledore frowned at the chaotic surroundings. Spotting Percy's figure at the stairway, he called out, Prefect, ask the students to return to their dormitories. No one should be out tonight. Upon receiving the headmaster's orders, Percy promptly ushered those awakened students back to their quarters. Professor Dumbledore then cast a repairing charm to restore the shattered tables and chairs. Noticing the deep crater left by a killing curse on the fireplace, his expression turned solemn at once. The three of them exited the common room, heading toward the headmaster's office. Along the way, none spoke a word. Harry trailed behind them, utterly bewildered, clueless as to what was transpiring. All right, I believe you may speak now, Professor Dumbledore said, settling into a seat. Xiaoji placed the petrified mouse to one side of the desk, then withdrew a scroll of parchment from his ring. Fred and George gave this to me today. Tonight, I noticed something peculiar about it. He unrolled the parchment. Professor Dumbledore and Harry leaned in. It appeared to be an ordinary, blank scroll. Nothing out of the ordinary. Both stared at Xiaoji, baffled. Drawing his wand, Xiaoji tapped it against the parchment. I solemnly swear I am up to no good. Nearby, Peter Pettigrew, still stiffly lying on the table, felt an icy chill run through him upon hearing those familiar words. He had the Marauder's map. So, it was through that map he'd been detected? No sooner had Xiaoji finished speaking than delicate ink lines began spreading outward from where his wand had touched, resembling a spiderweb. They interlaced and crisscrossed, eventually covering every inch of the parchment. At the top of the map appeared numerous green, cursive letters. Moony, Wormtail, Padfoot, and Prongs, the noble gentleman dedicated to aiding all magical pranksters, proudly presenting the Marauder's map. To their astonishment, Harry and Professor Dumbledore saw countless tiny blacks dotting the Hogwarts map, each one bearing a name. These dots evidently represented people currently within Hogwarts. Then Professor Dumbledore noticed 4 such dots right inside his own office. His eyes narrowed. Apart from Harry himself and Xiaoji, that third bore the name Peter Pettigrew. Hadn't he been blasted into oblivion 12 years ago during the confrontation against Sirius Black? Peter Pettigrew ought to be a long-dead hero by now. Why was he showing up in his office? A sudden realization struck Professor Dumbledore. His gaze snapped toward the mouse on the table. Harry, too, had noticed it. Wasn't that Ron's pet, Scabbers? Could the Peter Pettigrew marked on the map actually be this mouse? So, Professor Dumbledore gazed at the mouse and sighed, myriad thoughts flooding his mind. Indeed, Professor, upon receiving this map, I noticed a man named Peter Pettigrew lingering near Ron. Xiaoji sat down, speaking calmly. Knowing there's no student named Peter at Gryffindor, I assumed the map must be malfunctioning. The one sleeping with Ron wasn't Pettigrew but Potter, seeing as Harry himself wasn't in his bed. Harry felt a bit disheartened. Why would he be sleeping with Ron? And tonight's nighttime outing had been such a disaster. He'd been caught red-handed. Xiaoji continued. Curious, I quietly slipped into their dormitory. Lifting Ron's curtain, I saw he was fast asleep. Yet horrifyingly, There was no one else in his bed. Nervous, I returned to the common room to consult the map again, and that's when I saw Peter Pettigrew fleeing from the dormitory. Drawing my wand, I kept watch over the map, waiting, only to see a mouse appear. I was baffled. Why would Ron's pet, Scabbers, be marked as Peter Pettigrew on the map? Just as I stood astonished, Scabbers transformed into a 5.0-foot tall, plump little wizard. Before I could react, he snatched my wand. Hearing that a mouse had turned into a wizard, Professor Dumbledore turned toward the mouse on the table. So he's an animagus? That explains everything, he murmured softly. Professor? Siaji looked at him, feigning confusion. Oh, nothing at all. Do carry on. Harry stared at the large mouse, recalling what Siaji had once told him about animagi. Professor McGonagall herself was an animagus. She could transform into a cat, which meant the pet Ron cuddled to sleep with nightly was actually a wizard. Good heavens! If Ron ever learned this, Harry dared not imagine Ron's reaction. Chapter 247. Confused Harry wonders why Siaji said what he did next. What happened next was indeed related to me. But what connection could this Peter Pettigrew possibly have with me? Why did Siaji say it was related to me? Professor Dumbledore, you're aware of my abilities. Even though my wand was taken from me, he stood no chance of harming me at all. Siaji spoke casually. Indeed. Given your strength, Peter truly stood no chance against you. Dumbledore replied with a smile, nodding in agreement. Back when Siaji hadn't even enrolled at Hogwarts, he'd already managed to defeat an entire team of Aurors single-handedly. Harry also agreed, wholeheartedly. He recalled the Hound Step spell Siaji had taught him. With that magic at his disposal, it would be nearly impossible for Peter Pettigrew to harm Siaji. Still, fighting a wizard wielding a wand while unarmed was undeniably dangerous. Harry thought back to that scorched crater left by the killing curse on the fireplace. Dumbledore spoke solemnly. If you ever sense anything amiss in the future, please reach out to me right away. I worry endlessly about my students' safety. So, I certainly won't find you bothersome, Siaji nodded. Apologies, Professor Dumbledore. I thought I could handle him myself. Oh, you certainly could have handled him. Still, please don't take such risks again. You've done this far too many times. I truly don't wish to endure the pain of nearly losing you once more. Dumbledore let out a sigh. You should consider your friends more. Last year, he actually believed you'd been killed by Quirrell. He was so distraught he lost all composure, unleashing a spell that reduced Quirrell to ashes in an instant. My apologies, Professor Dumbledore. From now on, I'll definitely inform you first. Dumbledore nodded. I hope you truly mean that. Very well, please continue. In any case, I subdued him. A wizard who turned himself into a rat and hid within Hogwarts. I figured he must be plotting something. So, while waiting for you to arrive, I cast legilimency on him, and thus, I learned a few things. Siaji glanced at Harry. These revelations are relevant to Harry, which is why I suggested he join us in the headmaster's office. Are really? What is it? Harry gazed at Siaji, utterly bewildered. Dumbledore let out another sigh, then fixed Siaji with a quiet stare. He seemed to have an inkling of what had occurred, yet the specifics remained unclear. I saw that it was he who betrayed James and Lily Potter's whereabouts to Voldemort, leading directly to their deaths, Siaji stated succinctly. What? Harry stared furiously at the large rat on the table. He'd never known this archenemy had been so close to him all along. He wished he could tear the creature into pieces right this instant. But how did he know where my parents were hiding? What connection did he have to them? Harry managed to retain some semblance of rationality. Suppressing his rage, he pressed on with questions. I can answer that, Harry. Dumbledore gazed at him with deep compassion. When your parents were still students at Hogwarts, Peter Pettigrew was one of their closest friends. Dumbledore then recounted certain events from those days. Harry stood there, utterly stunned. It turned out he actually had a godfather. And due to Peter Pettigrew, this godfather was currently languishing in Azkaban. Yet, I remain puzzled. The original secret keeper under the Fidelius charm was Sirius Black. How did it become Peter instead? Dumbledore inquired, baffled. I believe it's best to hear this straight from the source, Xiaji replied, eyeing the rigid rat on the table. We certainly ought to listen to what he has to say. Dumbledore's expression hardened. He swiftly seized Peter Pettigrew and led him to an open space within the office. Xiaji gently pulled Harry back, shielding him behind him. On the walls, the portraits of past headmasters had been feigning sleep, but now they dropped the pretense, all holding their breath as they stared intently at the rat. They'd all been eavesdropping on Xiaji's words earlier. Kindly summon Severus and Minerva for me, Dumbledore requested of the portraits. Two unnamed headmasters nodded in response, then faded away from their frames. Dumbledore examined the rat closely, lingering briefly on its toeless foot. He refrained from reversing the transformation immediately, opting instead to await the two professors. McGonagall and Snape arrived swiftly, their faces etched with confusion as they beheld Xiaji and Harry in the headmaster's office. McGonagall pressed her lips together. She'd half expected Xiaji and Harry to have broken some school rules yet again, only to be caught red-handed by Professor Dumbledore. The thought of Gryffindor losing further points sent a pang of distress through her. Harry, glaring at McGonagall's stern expression, felt utterly bewildered. You've arrived, Dumbledore spoke up. Albus, you called us here. Is there some matter? McGonagall couldn't help but ask. I'd like you both to serve as witnesses. We're about to reunite with an old acquaintance. Dumbledore set the rat down on the floor. Snape frowned, eyeing the rat with deep suspicion. McGonagall exhaled softly in relief. At least it wasn't Xiaji or Harry at fault. Dumbledore waved his wand, dispelling the petrification charm. Peter immediately attempted to flee. Yet a crimson spell struck him mid-motion. Whoosh! Both Snape and McGonagall watched in awe as the plump rat began to morph. McGonagall instantly recognized it. This was a transformation via animagus magic. This rat was a wizard. Peter reverted to his original form, collapsing to the ground. His short, rotund frame lacked the agility it possessed as a rat. Professor. Long time no see. Peter's face had turned deathly pale. McGonagall's eyes widened in shock. Merlin's beard. You're Peter Pettigrew. Aren't you dead? Snape's initial astonishment swiftly curdled into utter revulsion. It was a look of profound loathing. Xiaji then recounted the events leading up to this moment. So, it was you who betrayed James and Lily. McGonagall clutched her chest. She nearly fainted from rage upon hearing this. Because of this cowardly traitor, 2 of her students had died, while another had been wrongfully imprisoned in Azkaban. Oh. Back when I heard you died in battle, I felt such pride. I even regretted ever doubting your courage. McGonagall glared at Peter Pettigrew furiously. How dare you? James and Lily were your closest friends. Back in school, everyone despised you. Only they offered you kindness and support. How could you bear to betray them? And no, I didn't betray them. Sirius Black did. Peter still clung to a sliver of false hope. If you truly had nothing to hide, why do you hide as a rat, cowering in the Weasley home? Xiaji spoke up, dryly amused. Peter's trembling body instantly stiffened. McGonagall nodded in agreement. Indeed, had Peter been innocent, he'd have no reason to hide as a rat. I imagine you dared not let Sirius know you were still alive, Xiaji added mockingly. The whole world believed you dead, including Sirius. I'd wager he'd hunt you to the ends of the earth if he knew you'd survived. That's why you didn't surrender, opting instead to languish in Azkaban for over a decade. Chapter 248. Xiaji, perhaps I have a way. No, I'm so scared. You have no idea how terrifying Voldemort is. There was no way we could have won that war. Peter Pettigrew, completely undone by Xiaji's words, began spilling everything. Everyone stared at him in fury. The truth is, we won. We're still alive, while the man you fear has been defeated. Professor McGonagall declared angrily. Tonight, Every single person gathered here has faced Voldemort head-on. In particular, Xiaoji and Harry, just first years last year, yet they dared to confront the very same Voldemort you're so terrified of. Professor Dumbledore's deep blue eyes blazed with righteous anger. I. Faced with Dumbledore and McGonagall's words, Peter could only stammer helplessly. Truthfully, he couldn't comprehend it at all. How could the all-powerful Dark Lord fail to kill even a child? Otherwise, why would he have needed to transform into a rat and hide for over a decade? How had this seemingly guaranteed victory suddenly fallen apart? Spare me, please. Harry, your eyes are just like your mother's. You're such a kind-hearted child, right? You'll spare me, won't you? I was a good friend of your father's. I'm sure he wouldn't kill me. Peter crawled over, clutching Harry's legs and pleading desperately. Harry kicked him away in disgust, roaring back, "Spare you? Then why couldn't you spare my mom and dad? You betrayed them. How dare you even claim to be their friend?" Snape gazed at Peter as though he were nothing but a corpse. Lily, his beloved Lily, had died at Voldemort's hands all because of this spineless coward. Had Xiaoji not been gripping his robe since earlier, Snape would have already charged forth and torn this scum into pieces. At least there was still a chance to bring Lily back to life. Snape kept repeating this to himself, desperately trying to console himself. I ask you, why were you the one chosen as the secret keeper? I recall it was Sirius Black at the time, Dumbledore inquired. He felt he stood out too much. Everyone knew he was James's best friend. He feared that if captured, he'd be tortured with Veritaserum until he revealed James and Lily's hiding place. So he came to me. He figured I was so timid that no one would ever suspect me to be the secret keeper. Thus. And so Sirius secretly replaced himself as secret keeper with you. Dumbledore let out a weary sigh. Undoubtedly, Sirius had placed his trust in the wrong person. This spineless wretch promptly betrayed James and Lily to his master. This idiot, Snape growled through gritted teeth. Everyone knew exactly who he meant, yet no one dared to contradict him. Seeing the silence settle over the headmaster's office, Xiaoji spoke up. So, does this mean we can now bring Sirius Black out from Azkaban? Oh, of course. He's suffered for so many years. It's our fault. We should have realized long ago that Sirius would never betray James or Lily. Dumbledore sighed once more. Professor McGonagall's eyes were red-rimmed, and she occasionally sniffled. Tonight's events had deeply shaken her. Dumbledore wrote a letter and had Fawkes deliver it. He had to inform the Ministry of Magic about tonight's events, requesting they send Ours to take Peter Pettigrew away and swiftly release the innocent Sirius Black. Minerva, I've opened a full connection between Hogwarts and the Ministry. Soon, Ours will arrive using flu powder. Please go greet them. McGonagall nodded, wiped her eyes, and hurried off. Peter, I still have one more question. While hiding at the Weasleys and sneaking into Hogwarts with Ron, what was your purpose? Dumbledore turned his gaze back to Peter. Me. What was I planning? Peter felt utterly confused. He'd planned nothing at all. He'd merely been hiding at the Weasleys out of fear. Suddenly, though, a voice within his mind spoke up, contradicting him, and he heard himself respond. I received a diary. It once belonged to my master. Inside it dwells a fragment of his soul. I recognize it. It's a piece of my master himself. He instructed me to bring it into Hogwarts, help him open the Chamber of Secrets, and assist in his resurrection. Peter kept his head bowed as he spoke. Dumbledore asked urgently, "Where is that diary now? Is it with Ron?" A diary containing a fragment of Voldemort's soul. That was incredibly dangerous. Such a dark magic artifact posed an extreme threat to any young wizard. No, it's not with Ron, Peter replied softly. Then where is it? Dumbledore pressed gravely. I have no idea. You have no idea? Weren't you the one who brought it in? Yes, but after entering the school, it told me to leave it in an abandoned classroom and go away. When I returned to that classroom later, the diary had vanished. Dumbledore studied Peter's eyes intently, trying to discern whether he lied. After a moment, he murmured, So, the diary remains somewhere within Hogwarts. His expression darkened. Someone took it. Finding such a small object in a castle this vast will be incredibly difficult. Yet, he absolutely had to locate that diary. It belonged to Voldemort. It was far too perilous to leave unguarded. Whoever had taken it was now in grave danger, for the diary had clearly chosen them and ensnared them. Most likely, they'd become an ally to that fragment of Voldemort's soul. Dumbledore's face was grim. He must find that diary before it could harm any students. 50 years ago, one student had died when the chamber opened. He wouldn't allow such a tragedy to happen again. Tom, you truly give me no peace. After a long silence, Professor Dumbledore turned to Xiaji and Harry. You two may return now. It's very late. We'll handle the rest from here. Xiaji, thank goodness you spotted Peter. You saved Sirius, and thanks to you, we've uncovered their entire plot. Truly, we owe you so much. Dumbledore spoke with deep gratitude. Professor, may I have the map back? Xiaji asked hesitantly, as though afraid Dumbledore might refuse. I believe I'll need to keep this map for some time, Xiaji. Dumbledore smiled gently. But I'll return it to you later. For now, though, I'll require its assistance. Dumbledore intended to use this magical map to locate whoever had opened the chamber and retrieve the diary from them. Professor, are you trying to find that diary?
Exactly.
Without a doubt, it's an item belonging to the Dark Lord. It's far too dangerous to remain at Hogwarts. Dumbledore frowned. Finding this diary wouldn't be easy. Professor, perhaps I have a way to locate it. Xiaji spoke hesitantly. Chapter 249, Xiaji, a few fatal wounds are no big deal. Is there any way for you to locate that diary? How do you plan to do it? Dumbledore didn't believe Xiaji was merely joking. He knew Xiaji well. Without being absolutely certain, he wouldn't have spoken such words. Well, this will require me to utilize one of my innate talents. Your talents? Dumbledore narrowed his eyes behind his spectacles. But won't this end up harming your body once again? There will be some minor effects, but compared to the potential dangers posed by that diary, this slight cost is hardly anything. Xiaji appeared resolute. Dumbledore gave a slow nod. Very well. Since you've said so, Severus, have you brought sufficient potions with you? Snape cast a deep glance at Xiaji, then nodded deliberately. I've brought all kinds of potions. What he meant was that he'd prepared numerous varieties. No matter what kind of injuries Xiaji might sustain, he'd have the appropriate remedy on hand. Xiaji nodded in acknowledgement, about to speak, when suddenly the door to the headmaster's office was knocked upon. Come in, Dumbledore called out. Creak. The wooden door of the rotating staircase opened, and several individuals entered. At the forefront was a short, plump, middle-aged man with a slightly balding head, clutching a hat politely in hand. It was Cornelius Fudge, Minister for Magic. Behind him followed Kingsley Shacklebolt and Dawlish, both trusted aides accompanying the minister. Fudge frowned upon spotting Wormtail, still cowering on the floor, trembling in fear. This was a grave matter indeed. A decorated war hero, awarded the Order of Merlin, first class, who had supposedly died in battle. Now he'd reappeared, and as a traitor, no less. If mishandled, this incident could severely undermine the credibility of the Ministry of Magic. Kingsley and Dawlish also recognized Wormtail. They'd met him years ago. They confirmed without doubt that this was indeed Peter Pettigrew. They exchanged glances, both acutely aware of the gravity at hand. A traitor had been honored as a hero, while the true hero had spent 12 years imprisoned in Azkaban without trial. They could already foresee tomorrow's headline in the Daily Prophet. Explosive, sensational news. Albus, upon hearing the news, I hurried over at once. Fudge shook hands with Dumbledore. At this point, Fudge still relied on Dumbledore's support and held no hostility toward him. Fudge, I'm entrusting Peter Pettigrew to you. You might still extract further information from him. However, it's evident that Sirius Black is innocent. I recommend his immediate release. Dumbledore spoke calmly. Of course. That despicable traitor shall receive his just deserts, while the true hero will be set free. Fudge cast a disdainful glance at Peter. Hearing the words just deserts, Peter shuddered involuntarily. He thought of Azkaban and those terrifying dementors within. Once I've brought him back, I'll send word to Azkaban at once. Sirius Black must be released tonight. You'll need to dispatch someone trustworthy to fetch him. You know, few survive years in Azkaban only to still walk unaided. Fudge shook his head solemnly. Very well, I'll arrange that. His gaze swept over Snape, then settled upon Professor McGonagall. Minerva, I'd be grateful if you'd accompany Hagrid to bring Sirius back and ensure he receives optimal treatment at St. Mungo's. I believe the Ministry won't object to covering his medical expenses. Absolutely. Of course. Fudge nodded fervently. After all, Sirius's imprisonment wasn't his doing. Portraying himself as fair-minded would only enhance his public image. Kingsley, Dawlish, escort him back to the Ministry and interrogate him thoroughly. Fudge issued his orders. Kingsley and Dawlish nodded, stepped forward, and hoisted the terrified Wormtail upright. They gave Dumbledore a brief nod and prepared to depart. Suddenly, Siaji interjected, "He's an illegal animagus. Be careful. He might transform into a rat and flee." Yes, his animagus form is a rat. That's how he escaped through the sewers years ago. Siaji is correct. You must remain vigilant. Dumbledore confirmed. Peter let out a pained shriek. He realized even his last chance at escape had vanished. Dawlish raised his wand, casting petrification and stunning spells in rapid succession, then used Wingardium Leviosa to drag the stiffened Peter away. Kingsley followed him out. Ignoring Peter's removal, Fudge turned his gaze to Siaji. "Long time no see, Siaji. You still remember me, I hope?" Fudge eagerly extended his hand. This was the future great prophet. He must cultivate a good relationship. "I might forget anyone else, but never someone as distinguished as yourself, Minister." Siaji smiled warmly. Fudge then turned to Harry. Are you perhaps the famed Harry Potter?" He shook hands with Harry affectionately, the legendary savior who'd ended Voldemort's reign. Another individual Siaji must cultivate. Thus, Fudge acted with utmost humility. As minister, he displayed almost excessive deference toward these two 11- or 12-year-old wizards. Harry stiffly reciprocated the handshake. Unlike Siaji, he couldn't remain composed upon meeting such a towering figure as the Minister of Magic. Siaji turned to Dumbledore. "Professor, I believe I may begin now. The sooner we locate that diary, the sooner Hogwarts finds peace." "What diary?" Fudge asked, bewildered. Dumbledore recounted the prior events. "I knew you were extraordinary. Single-handedly capturing a Death Eater? I must nominate you for an Order of Merlin. I trust, Albus, you won't object." Fudge exclaimed excitedly. "Of course I won't object. I wholeheartedly support this." Dumbledore smiled. In Dumbledore's eyes, Siaji's achievements thus far warranted an Order of Merlin, second class. It was ironic. Even Gilderoy Lockhart had earned a third class. "Professor, Minister, I'm honored by your nomination. Now, shall we begin?" "Of course, but if it proves too difficult, do not push yourself." Fudge spoke with genuine concern and anticipation. Should he be present when the diary was found, his status as minister would only rise further. Siaji drew a deep breath, closed his eyes briefly in concentration, then abruptly opened them and retrieved a pipe from his ring, taking a vigorous puff. The pipe, seemingly perpetually lit, blazed brightly. "Phew!" Siaji exhaled. Thick, dense smoke billowed forth, coalescing beneath the ceiling of the headmaster's office. All present held their breath, unwilling to miss a single detail. Even the portraits of past headmasters leaned forward eagerly, straining to witness the swirling mist. Gradually, the smoke formed a distinct image. It appeared to be a restroom, featuring a cylindrical sink. A cloaked figure, face hidden, approached the sink slowly. A hoarse, sibilant whisper emerged from beneath the hood. Asterisk click. Click. Asterisk. The cylindrical sink fractured into segments, then split apart, revealing a dark, gaping tunnel. Dumbledore's pupils contracted. This must be the entrance to the Chamber of Secrets. 50 years ago, the chamber had opened once. He'd never known its location, yet here it was, hidden within an ordinary restroom. In the vision, the figure leapt into the tunnel. Yet before Dumbledore and the others could glimpse its depths, the image abruptly vanished. Thud. Xiaji collapsed to the floor, eyes shut, blood trickling from all orifices. He appeared utterly wretched. Xiaji. Harry rushed to his side. Stand aside, Potter. Snape shoved Harry aside, then knelt to assess Xiaji's condition. He froze. He'd prepared numerous potions, yes, but Xiaji seemed afflicted by countless ailments at once. As a master potion maker, not a healer, he was utterly at a loss how to proceed. Seeing Xiaji's dire state and Snape's helplessness, Dumbledore grew anxious. Fox. The phoenix descended swiftly. We must head to the infirmary at once. Flames flared. Dumbledore and Xiaji vanished from sight. The others exchanged glances and hurried after them, racing toward the infirmary. Without a phoenix, they couldn't teleport. Professor McGonagall clutched her chest in distress, then sprinted toward Poppy's office. Xiaji's plight demanded informing his mother at once. At the infirmary, Dumbledore's sudden arrival startled Madame Pomfrey. Upon seeing Xiaji, bloodied and lifeless, she gasped and rushed to receive him. Merlin's feared. How does this boy keep getting injured? And each time, more severely. Madame Pomfrey was a consummate healer, far surpassing Snape's amateurish efforts. She pushed Dumbledore aside and swiftly conducted multiple examinations. Oh, his mental exhaustion is staggering. It's as if he's gone a week without sleep. Oh no, his magical reserves are utterly depleted. Had you arrived later, he might have died. I'll need restorative potions. After over 10 minutes of frantic effort, she finally restored Xiaji's breathing. Dumbledore gazed sorrowfully at his bedridden student. Oh, Xiaji, was this what you meant by minor effects? You nearly lost your life. Xiaji. The infirmary door swung openless, face pale with worry, entered, followed closely by the equally anxious Cassandra Vole. Chapter 250. No matter what you do in the future, I will always follow you. When Madame Pomfrey saw Professor Liss rush in, followed by a large group of people, her brows immediately furrowed in concern. Professor Dumbledore interrupted her. She's this child's mother, so. Oh, very well. Just ask them to be quieter. This child urgently needs rest right now. Madame Pomfrey wiped away tears from the corners of her eyes. Earlier, while examining and treating Xiaji, her heart had ached tremendously. Good heavens, this was a perfectly healthy child, yet upon arrival, all his organs showed signs of some strange form of failure. Had this happened in a Muggle hospital, this child would have already perished. Seeing Xiaji now fast asleep with steady breathing, Liss finally breathed a sigh of relief. She grabbed Madame Pomfrey's hand and gratefully exclaimed, Thank you. Thank you so much. It's my duty. No need to thank me. I truly have no idea what's going on with this child. He ends up severely injured every single year. Noticing Liss's increasingly worried expression, Madame Pomfrey realized she might have said something wrong and hurriedly tried to comfort her. It's all right now, Professor Liss. He's safe now. After a few more days of rest, he'll be bouncing around just fine. Cassandra Vole bit her lip, gazing quietly at Xiaji. She'd thought she might actually be of some help this time, yet it turned out the same way again. A wave of helplessness washed over her. Upon seeing Snape, Madame Pomfrey quickly beckoned him over and requested several vials of potion from him. Once confirming Xiaji was out of danger, Professor McGonagall hurriedly took Harry away with her. She needed to meet Hagrid so they could fetch Sirius Black together. As Sirius Black's godson, Harry was deemed fit to accompany them as well. Minister Fudge, upon witnessing all this, didn't linger long either. After exchanging greetings with Professor Dumbledore, he preceded Professor McGonagall and headed straight toward Azkaban. Professor Dumbledore, what exactly happened? Liss asked softly. This is my fault. I failed to protect him. Dumbledore recounted how Xiaji had discovered Peter, successfully captured him, and then used divination to interpret the contents of the diary. Since everyone present was trustworthy, Dumbledore made no effort to conceal Xiaji's innate talent for divination. So, he ended up injured because he used divination? Lys inquired. Yes. The visions must have been far too detailed, exceeding his mental limits. Dumbledore sighed, filled with remorse. I ought to have noticed sooner, but at the time, I was far too preoccupied with deciphering the prophecy itself. No one else seemed to notice, but a flicker of doubt flashed through Cassandra's eyes. No one knew Xiaji's divination abilities better than she and Hermione. Back then, to save them both, he'd spent an entire day performing countless iterations of predictions. His body had shown absolutely no adverse effects whatsoever. Yet now, merely interpreting a single vision, he'd suffered such severe injuries? After quite some time, all the professors gradually departed. Lys then led Madame Pomfrey to her own office, eager to learn more about Xiaji's condition. Cassandra glanced around. Now, only she and Xiaji remained in the infirmary. She lowered her gaze toward him, only to meet his wide-open, gleaming eyes. You really are all right, Cassandra exhaled in relief. It seemed Xiaji had feigned his injuries after all. Cassandra, thank you for covering for me, Xiaji spoke softly. Cassandra pulled over a chair beside the bed and sat down, gazing quietly at him. May I ask why? Xiaji directed his gaze toward the ceiling, avoiding a direct reply. Instead, he posed a rather peculiar question. Cassandra, should I end up doing something, well, doing things that everyone deems terribly wrong in the future, would you resent me for it? Struggling to articulate his thoughts, Xiaji's speech grew slightly stuttering. Cassandra fell silent for a moment. Xiaji, I understand your intentions. To achieve them, certain less than honorable methods might indeed be unavoidable. Yet so far, I've yet to witness you commit a single wrongful act, have I? Even those you've killed using dark magic were all truly deserving villains. Thus, the moment I drank that potion alongside you, the answer to your question was already clear, Xiaji. No matter what you do in the future, I'll always stand by your side, Cassandra murmured softly. Xiaji barely caught her words, given how keen his ears were. Xiaji gazed into her emerald green eyes, his own shining brightly. Now that you're all right, I'll leave you be, and go. Flustered, Cassandra fled from the infirmary like she was running for her life. Inside the gloomy prison cell, Sirius Black remained curled up in his usual corner. Clutched tightly in his hand was that small silver ball. Thanks to it, the Dementors had seemingly forgotten his existence entirely over these past months. They hadn't returned to feed on him even once. This had brought Sirius Black considerable relief. For the first time, some semblance of color returned to his pale face. That young wizard named Xiaji had promised him he'd help him escape. Yet, given the irrefutable evidence that had landed him in Azkaban, overturning his conviction seemed utterly impossible. His only options were either escaping on his own or having someone forcefully breach Azkaban to rescue him. Thus, he doubted whether that young wizard could truly clear his name. Even so, even if Xiaji failed to prove his innocence, it hardly mattered. Thanks to that silver ball, his mental state had vastly improved, along with a noticeable recovery in his magical power. In another few months, should Xiaji still fail, Sirius intended to attempt escape himself. He'd certainly remember this young wizard's kindness. Creak. Distantly, a corridor iron door swung open. Unfazed, Sirius figured more new prisoners had arrived. As someone entered the corridor, frantic, maniacal shouts erupted from the surrounding cells. Having spent ages imprisoned in Azkaban, subjected daily to Demento attacks, these inmates had long since lost their sanity. Had Sirius not firmly believed in his own innocence, he'd have succumbed to madness as well. He heard Auror's bellowing commands, gradually silencing those chaotic cries. Footsteps drew nearer. It seemed this new arrival would be locked up right next door. Just then, the footsteps halted precisely before his cell. Please grant me flowers, Curious, Sirius lifted his head and glanced toward the door. There stood a short, plump, middle-aged man. Sirius recognized him at once. Minister Fudge. What on earth was he doing here? Fudge covered his nose with a handkerchief, visibly disgusted by his surroundings. Hurry up, I truly wish to leave this place at once, Fudge grumbled. Behind him, several Aurors strode forth and unlocked Sirius's cell door. Startled, Sirius watched as the iron door that had barred him for 12 long years now stood wide open. The Aurors approached and hoisted his emaciated frame upright. Where are you taking me? Sirius heard his own hoarse voice ask. I'm sorry. The individuals who imprisoned you without trial, they truly acted with gross negligence. Fudge stepped forward and spoke. Do you mean? Sirius's eyes widened in shock. An indescribable surge of euphoria flooded his heart. Yes. Congratulations, Mr. Black. You've been declared innocent. Henceforth you're free. Fudge strove to sound cheerful. Yet the oppressive atmosphere and foul odors made this effort immensely difficult. Sirius Black stood utterly stunned, gripping that silver ball tightly. That young wizard, Xiaji, had promised to prove his innocence. To think, mere months later, it had actually happened. He hadn't lied to me. Sirius knew full well he'd never have been released without outside help. This had to be Xiaji working behind the scenes. Gratitude overflowed his heart. How exactly was my innocence proven? We can explain everything once we're outside. Or perhaps your godson would prefer to recount the details to you. Finally, Fudge managed a strained smile.
Oh.
Harry's here too. Indeed, he's come to fetch you. Sirius remained weak. 2 Aurors flanked him, slowly guiding him outward. Seeing Sirius's imminent release, the other inmates erupted into clamor. Release me too. I'm innocent. Ahaha. The Dark Lord shall return and slaughter you all. My master shall rescue us. Sirius cast them a disdainful glance. Most were Death Eaters who'd committed untold atrocities during Voldemort's reign, yet merely languished in Azkaban. Had he been the one to judge them, he'd have sentenced them all to death without hesitation. You see, apparition is forbidden within Azkaban, Fudge remarked to Sirius. We must depart via Flowpowder or Hearths. Well, your godson awaits you at the Ministry. Given this place's dreadful conditions, I saw no need to bring him here. Oh, thank you, Minister. Harry should definitely stay far from those Dementors, Sirius replied. This hearth temporarily connects to the Ministry. I've instructed 1 Auror to accompany you. Fudge nodded toward one of his men. That Auror swiftly grabbed some Flowpowder and helped Sirius step into the hearth.